Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back to the VET S.O.S podcast here on the Scoop channel. Remember, you do not have to drown in the sea of transition. Grab that VET S.O.S Lifeline. Today is going to be special because we're continuing on with the military effect. It's our turn to serve campaign. And y'all thought that we was finished with the last one? It just keep getting better and better and better. Y'all got to get these resources. I got an awesome guest. And y'all like, man, where was Valerie this whole time? Where was her team? Where was her organization? I didn't even know about this. But don't worry. You're going to know after today. And you're going to connect with her. You're going to connect with her team. You're going to see what it's all about because she is rewriting the rules what it means to serve, lead, and empower. She is a combat tested U.S. Army first sergeant veteran turned entrepreneur. I'm gonna let all this stuff sink in for y'all because this is how deep we're gonna get. She's a change maker. She's a national advocate. She is Valerie Lavin. As the founder and CEO of Luminary Global, Valerie equips those on the front lines with elite emergency preparedness. But that's just the beginning. She is also the co-founder of Action Zone, champion veteran and first responder entrepreneurs with training that fuels purpose-driven businesses. From national advisory boards, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Valerie. How you doing today, Valerie?
I'm fine. Thank you so much, my friend. I'm going to have you introduce me all the time. Hype me up and
Hey,
all the
it's in my
nerve.
DNA. It's in my DNA. You just give me a call. I come over there. I got the mic and everything. I'll bring you a nice. I'll bring you a nice. So
I
how you
love it.
doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, before we start, I got a little bit of scoop on you. You know, we had a little conversation. I got the little bio before, but the people on the show, the listeners, want to know what's the scoop on Valerie.
uh, where do I don't know. I don't know what the scoop is.
We could
don't know where
start.
to
We could
begin.
start as you know, Chad. You know, coming in as a first sergeant. So definitely, that's huge as being a first sergeant. So for our non-veteran, I know this is part of the campaign, but you know, it's going to be some listeners and some viewers out there that's not in the military circle. So what the first sergeant does, think of it as the HR leader for an organization. She handles the health, the wealth, the morale. She advises on discipline to the we'll call the commander, aka the CEO of that company, and she gives direction to people that needs correction. So, hopefully I summed it up a little bit, but you know, I don't know, maybe you can help me out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, in the Army, there's saying about first sergeants, they call it the mother of the company. It's that person, just as you described, that leads the people in the organization to be the best version of themselves. I really appreciate my time, uh, growing up in the military and all of the leadership opportunities that I had, because ultimately, when I became a first sergeant, the first time, it allowed me to be able to see and recognize talents and ability and potential in people that they didn't even realize it was, of themselves.
Wow. So now we come into, I call it the military. It's our time to serve campaign. The military effect. That's the book that you know that we're going to talk about later on. But it's our turn to serve. What made you be a part of this campaign right here? Like when I guess when they knocked on your door, they reached out to you like, "Hey, do you want to be a part of this? It's our turn to serve campaign." And obviously, you say yes because we're having this conversation because it's going to be fire. So, how did that come about?
Well, I think that change occurs through storytelling, and it gives people um, hope and a vision of what their future potentially could be like. And most importantly, why I was interested in supporting this book and being a part of it is that there is life after transition. Um, and you don't have to be stuck in your combat boots and camouflage, because once you cross the gate for the last time, nobody cares. You know, they don't care. I had to reach back to post and for retirement services for various things, and no one take my phone calls. No one returned my phone calls. They didn't. They had there was no yes, first sergeant, when you're trying to get help. And I, in the book, I tell a little bit of the story of how I came about, joining the Army, and it's very comical, which I tell the story often. I was watching Private Benjamin, starring Goldie Hawn,
Yes.
one night after waiting tables in this very small town in Missouri, and from just a humorous beginning of my career, and then when it ended, and then transitioning into the veteran community, I was just really shocked at well, first, you can do great things, that you can't even imagine, uh, that you would do, from watching Private Benjamin to retiring, as a first sergeant. It Sometimes I reflect on that journey, and I'm like, how did I get here? It's just incredible. But then as I was transitioning into the veteran community, not only were my comrades, my, peers that were transitioning, going through TAPS at the same time. But it was even those that had already transitioned that were still struggling. I had no idea because, when you're on the inside of the gate in combat boots and camouflage, like you're just focused on the mission, and you're focused on your troops. And I just never heard of the challenges. And, the senior leaders were telling us, "Oh, retiring as a sergeant first class is admirable. You're you're not going to have problems finding a job. They're going to want to hire you for your leadership experience, your military experience, and all the things." And it didn't dawn on me until after I had retired. I'm like, what the hell do they know? They're still in combat boots
Right.
and
They're still
camouflage. They're
in.
still
Right.
serving. They haven't made that transition trying to find jobs. And then, when you're at levels above EA, sergeant majors and um, colonels and generals, like you get offered paid positions on boards because they want your Rolodex, they want your network. They want your title to be associated with their business. But yeah, so there was just a huge disconnect. And I felt like this book, and what Scott was doing was sharing that while transition is hard, and I have no doubt that almost everybody in this book is still struggling with something with transition, but that there is um, life, and there is success, and there uh, is newfound purpose to continue to serve. And it may not be service is not necessarily meaning you have to start a nonprofit or you have to work for a nonprofit. You can be a community leader with a for-profit business or an employee of somebody else's company, and still make a real impact. So yeah,
Right.
that's why
So
I agreed.
no, so it's good because so you had this transition, like you said, you was the first sergeant. So everybody used to yes, first sergeant, no first sergeant. But then once you started to transition out, and just like for me too, the seat didn't even get cold. Like it was already somebody in there before I had my final out. So I could only imagine, as being the first sergeant, same thing, right? Because the mission gotta keep moving forward. So when you had your transition, you probably went to the house, you probably sat on the couch or sat around the table and it's like, I need to do something else. Like I need to start an entrepreneurship. I'm gonna, you know what? I'm gonna look into starting a enterprise, I call it. I'm gonna come up, what made you come up with your initial Luminary Global? Did I say that right? My Brooklynese be kicking in
Yeah,
sometimes. So
yes, Luminary Global. Yeah, actually, Luminary is not my first business. when I was, punched in the face with the realization that veterans were struggling with employment and, homelessness and all of the challenges, I went home and I told Jeremy, my husband, and we weren't married quite yet, but I was like, oh my gosh, there's a problem. I'm a first sergeant. I'm a fixer of things. I've got to figure out how to fix this.
Right.
So, as I was preparing for, retirement, I knew I wanted to go to school to be a physical therapist. So, I had been positioning myself for a couple of years, to be ready to be a full-time student for at least, 4 to 8 years. I was completely debt free. My dog had died the year before. Jeremy and I weren't married yet. So, it was just me, my paid off car, and, all the stuff that I could fit into it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but this realization, and having the feeling or the need to, help fix the problem, I was encouraged by a mentor and a friend to, start a veteran staffing company. And, she had been and this is 2014, so she, was an HR professional. She'd been in HR and recruiting for 25 years back then in Tampa, and she said, "Often companies will ask me about, I wanna hire a veteran," but she struggled with finding a candidate, and then when she did, it was, really it was a struggle, it was a challenge to understand the resume or get the
Yeah.
service member or the veteran to be able to articulate exactly what they did that, the skill sets would match up to what that company, was hiring for. So I was like, "Oh, this is perfect. I'm Valerie the veteran, and I'm
Right.
gonna help you hire veterans because that's what you say that your company wants to do." And that was, again, another punch in the face that, yes, you're a first sergeant, and yes, you're always like, Just tell me what the mission is, and I will accomplish it," to, completely falling on my face and failing in that business because what did I know about transition? I was still transitioning myself. I had paid somebody $300 to write my resume, but then I never I never had to use it. So I'd never gone through the interview process. And yes, I had my friend and mentor who would help me. And then my husband, he was in staffing since he graduated from college. So,
Um,
at that time, around 10 years experience. So it's not like I didn't have
People around you, yeah,
yeah, I didn't have a network that knew what I was doing, but there's just so much more to running your own business than, "Hey, you wanna hire a veteran? Let me go buy you coffee."
right.
'Cause I spent a lot of money on coffee that first
Right.
year. Yeah, so that was my first company. Um, I got an opportunity to be the program manager of a veteran entrepreneurship course. I need some faculty members at a local community college here. And they contacted me and asked if I would be interested. And, they wanted, me in that position because luckily I had, my last assignment, was the commandant headquarters first sergeant at Central Command. And so I
Mhm.
was doing a lot of, community events, in that role. And, so yeah, I already kind of had a network, but they wanted me there because of that and because I could talk, veteran talk,
Right.
military talk. Um, and I only agreed to it if it was part-time because I still had, my staffing company and I didn't want to or talent acquisition because talent acquisition is sexier
Yeah, yeah.
than saying recruiting,
Staffing,
right,
right.
or staffing. Yeah. But, I don't wanna close the doors on my, company yet, but if it's part-time, yes, I will help you recruit for this program. And I absolutely fell in love with the space of, the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Tampa, even back then in 2014, was very rich in resources
Right.
and opportunities and support. So that grant was only 8 months. So I was like, okay, what if they don't get refunded? I've got to think of something. And my husband and I had always talked about doing something together. And so we came up with Luminary. It was
Mm,
initially a service business. We were going to do training and talent acquisition. We're going to be our services, as a first sergeant
right.
and trainer. And
Right.
my husband, with his staffing experience, it just seemed like, a good fit for our talents. And he had extensive experience in government contracting. He had opened the government contracting arm of the firm that he used to work for. And then, with my military experience and status, we just thought it would work. So anyway, fast forward, just like most businesses, you have um, your ups and downs and
Right.
your lefts and rights, your turns and your hills. And we um, I like to call them evolutions, but we pivoted to products. And I believe that, God's got a plan
Right.
for you. And this was his plan. Like, we could not, as a married couple, business partners, landed in a more perfect business for the two of us. So
Man.
that's how we came about Luminary.
And then so that's helping more of the veteran community. Well, I know that you have another one too, the Action Zone,
Mhm.
and that helps first responders and veterans trying to get into the entrepreneur space as well.
Yeah, and the two businesses, they overlap so much because the customers are very similar.
Mm,
We with Luminary, we hit all markets,
right.
or all channels, um, direct to consumer, B2B, B2C, smaller municipalities. That's
Mm,
like our sweet spot. Head of household, whoever's making sure the family's ready. But the core are, the preppers, family members, and the
mm,
first responders and military. So I don't have to necessarily change my language,
right.
talking to my customers for Luminary and my customers with Action Zone. We formed Action Zone in 2018 to provide entrepreneurship education to veterans and military spouses. And we were unique
Um,
at that time, that a lot of programs like that only served veterans, right? So we brought in the spouses and to include divorcees. So if you had, because, you know, military life is hard. Being a spouse of a
right.
military member is difficult. And unfortunately, our divorce rate is so high. But um, yeah, we wanted to provide that support to divorcees that had committed, part of their life to serve as well. So, and then we also encourage civilian business partners to participate with the veterans or military or the spouses and first responders, because with bringing and we allow the spouses to participate as well. They don't have to be working on the business. We just Those are two major friction points for founders. You know, why the hell do you want to start a business? Go get a job. You have a
Right. You
family. You
have the
got bills to
benefits.
pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Get a
then
steady check. Yeah.
right, and then business partners, I often tell people, like, getting a divorce from a business partner is far worse and hard and costly than it is to divorce a spouse.
Wow.
And I've done both, and I don't plan on getting a divorce again, but Jeremy and I are
Right.
gonna be married forever, but man, no more business partners because it is very painful. So those two areas, if we as a small agile nonprofit can do anything else, like that to support the founders, we do.
Right. Wow. And definitely and one of my questions I want to ask, definitely as a woman veteran, like what shifts are still needed to basically support and other women in trying to transition to the entrepreneurship and leadership role? Cause like you said, there's a lot of spouses or divorcees. Like, how do you, and showing them, you came from, as a female transition, as a woman veteran, starting a new business, have another business in there, and then just showing them that it's possible because the imposter syndrome kicks in, right? Oh, I
I
don't
live
know if I
it
could do
I
this.
live imposter syndrome every day. Like I said, how did I go from watching Private Benjamin to to
Right,
where I am today? But, I appreciate that question. And when I retired, I was integrating into the veteran community, and I didn't segregate my support, my advocacy work, between men and women, because soldier is a soldier,
right,
right? But it has um, been in the last couple of years, w the statistics haven't changed,
right,
basically, coming out of the military, I that's the stories that you hear, they're so heavy, right? Homelessness, addiction,
Yeah.
um, military sexual trauma, intimate partner violence, underemployed, and it to me at that time, because here I am, a new veteran figuring this out. Um, it was an equal playing field. Like every
Right.
veteran, men or male or female, had those challenges. But the longer I've been retired, 11 years this year, and the statistics, the numbers, the situation for women veterans hasn't changed. So I was asked to be on the Florida Department of Veteran Affairs State Women Veterans Council. And I don't just accept roles. I make
Right.
sure that it makes sense that I'm involved with the board or that organization. And in my research and just the statistics are staggering. You know, um, one out of every three or women veterans experienced MST. There are a higher percentage. I'm terrible at remembering numbers. I can pull up all of the numbers, but um, a higher percentage of PTSD, cancers, menopause. I mean,
Right.
you name it. Like because I have a lot of theories, but our bodies were treated like men, and biologically we're just not. So that
Right.
added stress on our bodies, I think, contributes to a lot of these statistics. So back to your original questions, I feel like I'm going down a rabbit hole
No,
here.
no, it's good
Yeah.
because, like I said,
Mhm.
people need to hear it because I know it's a lot. Like I have a lot of women veteran, and they, we speak, and it's like, man, I don't, it's even harder as a woman because one, people think like, oh, did your spouse serve? How many? Like, no, I am, I am the veteran. Like, I've done so. Is that extra
Yeah.
added stress on
Mhm.
that as well?
Yeah, my husband never served, but he played football in high school, college, so he's a Buffy guy, and um, that's always the question. And at the beginning of our relationship, it startled him because he's like,
Uh,
"Why are they asking me that?" You know. But I just actually Action Zone, we had a workshop, on Wednesday, and I asked, "Are there any, veterans,
uh,
in the workshop?" Raised their hand. Any military spouses? And then nobody raised their hand, but somebody from across the room said, "Yeah, there's one." And he pointed to a woman, who's actually, in one of my cohorts right now, who just retired from the Air Force. And, I looked at her and I was like, "No, she's a veteran. She just happens to be married to another, you know,
right,
veteran." And my first husband was in the Army as well, and I never labeled myself as a military spouse. You know what I mean? I am a veteran, and so, I want women who served, uh, regardless of what role,
right,
especially those that actually wore the uniform, that you are a veteran. You don't have to have a split identity, you
right,
know?
right,
And I know some women they appreciate military spouses in their new network, if they get out and um, um, continue to serve along with their service member. But I just I'm like, I'm a woman veteran, and this is what I've done, and this is what I can do, and we are a force to be reckoned with. We're underserved and underrecognized, and I feel like as much as sometimes I get, and just to be frank, sometimes I get tired, and I'm like, oh, do I have to go
right.
again? Do I have to do this? But I'm I always remind myself, like, if I'm not doing it, who's going to?
Who's gonna do it? Yeah, and that's huge because definitely thank you for your service.
Mm.
By the way,
Thank
and
you for yours.
thank you. And as you were sharing that story, I was like, wow, to serve in the active duty state, being a mom, just doing a lot of things, and what we talked about before we hit the record button, it's like always have to put that person away and pull in somebody else. It's like keep changing the personality because it depends on your environment. So My last question, before we transition out, is service after service. Now, I want the listeners to hear what I'm saying. Service after service. What does that mean to you personally? Like, and what legacy are you building for the next generation? Because you're trailblazing right now. So you did the military service, first sergeant. That's huge. People can look up the statistics. There's not a lot of women, first sergeants out there. She did it, and she had two businesses that she's running, nonprofit, helping first responders and veterans. Now, my final question is the legacy that you plan on leaving for the next generation behind us. What's on the horizon?
Oh, well, ironically, we're giving a workshop on service after service next month.
Nice.
Because veterans and military women specifically have a higher number of women veterans continue to volunteer and be advocates in their community. Um, for me, it has a lot to do with guilt. When people ask me why I do this, is I feel guilty because as a first sergeant, I had no idea um, all of the uh, I'll call them kids, but all of the service members that were getting out under my leadership, I was like, "What's your plan? I'm going to go back and work on the family farm, or I'm going to go to college." Okay, shake their hands. Thank you very much for your service, and then they were out the door. Um, had I known the struggles, I would have probably being entrepreneurial. I probably would have created some sort of program to help them prepare for that, or I I don't know what I would have done, but I do feel a sense of guilt that I didn't know, and could I have done something to help them, with the transition? So I hope that they all found their footing and they're all successful and doing whatever it is that they aspired to do once they left the military.
And that's a perfect way. And that's why this campaign is so important. Thank you for being a contributor of the campaign, of the book. And for the ones who just listen, like, well, what is this book Kings keeps talking about? Don't worry, you can find it on
You got
Amazon.
one right
Just type,
here.
yeah, just
Yeah,
type
we
in
do
the
on it.
military effect, you know,
Yeah, here it is
by
right here.
Scott. There it is, right there. Take a snapshot of it, everybody. Go support, get a copy of the book, support Valerie and her team because she's doing great things out there in the greater Tampa area. Is that how y'all say it down there in
Yeah,
Florida? The
Tampa
greater
Bay.
yeah, the
Yeah,
greater Tampa
or
Bay
Tampa
area.
Bay if you follow sports.
Oh, here we go. But still can't beat the Yankees. I'm just saying, we sit up there with a lot of championships, but no, I appreciate. Thank you for coming on to the scoop on the VET S.O.S podcast. Greatly appreciate it. And remember, everybody, do not drown in the sea of transition. You grab that VET S.O.S lifeline because we're here to help. Valerie and her team is here to help. This campaign is here to help. The book, hold it up one more time, Valerie, so they can see it. The book is here to help. Get a copy. Go to Amazon. Pull it up. It's going to be well worth it. Trust me. Until
It is a
next time.
fascinating read.
And it's a fascinating read. Thank you so much. Until next time, everybody. Peace.